All right, welcome everyone to our Applying for Funding with WFA webinar, specifically for the Applying for Leading from the South grant program. My name is Yasmin and I am a program officer with the grants team who is based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and we're very excited to have everyone here with us today. I am joined here today by the WFA grants team as well as people from the finance team. So let's first do a round of introductions of the WFA team joining us today. So we'll start with Malin. So please introduce yourself by name, your designation, and where you're based in.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Malin Ando. I'm the Director of Programs and leading the grants team. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very happy to have a good full house today. I'm based in Thailand, and I'd like to pass this on to Miruna.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Miruna, the finance manager. I'm currently based in Colombo, Sri Lanka. Shall I pass to Yasmin, please?
I've already introduced myself.
You so sorry.
It's all right. I'll pass it on to Himakshi then.
Thanks, Yasmin. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Himakshi. I work as a program officer with the grants team, and I'm based in Bangalore in India. I'll pass to Waisan.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Waisan. I'm one of the program officers for grants management as well, and I'm based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Over to you, Logna.
Hi everyone, so glad to have everyone here. My name is Logna. I'm a program associate with the grants team and I'm based in India. I think Eileen.
Hello, good morning everyone. I am Eileen. I am supporting the communications work of WFA. I am Filipino. I'm based in Mauritius.
And we also have Nivedita with us today. Nivedita.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Nivedita and I am a program officer with the grants team based in Bangalore, India.
All right, I think that's everyone. Thank you very much. Himakshi, could you move on to the third slide, please? All right, some general housekeeping announcements before we proceed. So as you already know, the presentation part of this session starting from now will be recorded. We will not be recording the Q&A. However, the presentation, minus the Q&A, of course, will be shared after the webinar on WFA's social media and other communication channels that those who are not able to join us today can do so. Again, like if you have concerns about being in a session that's being recorded, please, like you are perfectly welcome to exit the webinar at any point and just catch the presentation video afterwards. We also want to assure you that participant names, so the attendee names, are not visible on the recording. We have disabled video, voice, and public chat for all participants in the interest of safety and anonymity of those attending. If you have any queries, comments, or concerns, please directly add them to the Q&A chat. There is a dedicated Q&A segment right after the presentation, so you can message your questions then. Please hold your questions until after the presentation in case they're answered during the presentation itself. We also encourage everyone to refer to the LFS FAQ at the link that we'll be sharing in the general chat. So in a webinar, the default setting is for attendees to be muted. If you raise your hand, we will see you and we do acknowledge you, but to have your question answered, please type it into the Q&A box. There may be some questions that we are not able to answer right now, but we will make sure to respond to them via email once the webinar is over. So related to that, we are unable to respond directly to questions about registration and required documents during this webinar, as the context is different for each country. If you have questions about those, please message Eileen, who has introduced herself just now, with your email address, and they will be responded to via email by our team members shortly after the webinar. You can also email us directly at the email address we will drop into the general chat. We have enabled automatic transcription for this webinar for the original English audio. So you can find that in the bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. All right, fourth slide, please, Himakshi. All right, moving on, the agenda for today is fairly straightforward. I'll invite Malin to briefly introduce the fund, and then my colleague Himakshi will take you through the kind of groups we support and then speak about the grant itself, followed by a quick snapshot of the application process. My colleague Wei San will then end with some tips on a strong application before we open for questions. Over to you, Malin.
Thanks so much, Yasmin. Hello again, everyone. So let me just briefly introduce you to Women's Fund Asia. We're a regional feminist donor organization that supports the realization of the human rights of women, girls, trans, and intersex people in Asia. So we were established in 2004 as South Asia Women's Fund, or SOF, to address the lack of resources for grassroots women's organization in 5 countries in South Asia at the time. And then in 2018, we transformed into Women's Fund Asia with a bigger mandate to fund rights-based work across 18 countries in Asia. Please note that SOF in India, which you might have heard, which is a national women's organization, a women's fund, and is a sister fund of WFA, is a different entity from WFA. I do hope that you've heard of us before this, though. If you can shift to the next slide, please. So just looking at what we do, primary, of course, in terms of our strategies is to resource feminist movements in Asia. So we foster feminist movement building by seeding, strengthening, and sustaining groups working at multiple levels and are led by women, girls, trans, and intersex activists. We provide flexible and multi-level grant making to bridge resource gaps, which are dictated by the needs and priorities of women, girls, trans, and intersex people-led groups. Next, please. I hope interpretation-wise is going okay. Pace is fine. All right, we also do a lot of strengthening the feminist aid architecture for feminist movements in Asia, which is really looking at influencing aid and philanthropy, claiming resources as well as direct fundraising to ensure that funds flow to the region and that women's, girls, trans, and intersex rights movements in Asia have sustainable access to resources. Part of our work is also bolstering feminist movement, partnerships and power, so strengthening feminist skills and knowledge of our partners and of catalytic actors through community exchange and knowledge production, among other strategies. And finally, we grow and tend to our own feminist capacities, communities, and innovations such that we are supporting our expanded mandate and strengthening our capacity and resilience, as well as that of our partners. And with that, I'll turn over to Himakshi to take us through the Leading from the South program.
Thank you, Malin. So I'll just quickly give an overview of the Leading from the South program. LFS is a global grant-making program that's financed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Netherlands. And it's a grant-making program that's run by 4 different feminist funds based in the Global South. The African Women's Development Fund, which looks at Africa and the Middle East and Northern Africa region. FIMI, which is Foro Internacional de Mujeres Indigenas, or also known as the International Indigenous Women's Forum, which is an international forum but based in the Global South. Fondo de Mujeres del Sur, which is FMS, which looks at Latin America, and Women's Fund Asia, obviously with the Asia mandate. This is a grant-making program that looks to strengthen and sustain women's rights movements in the Global South, particularly to influence policy, to reduce exclusion, violence, discrimination, and inequality. Its objectives are threefold. One is to specifically look at prevention and elimination of sexual and gender-based violence. 2 is to strengthen the leadership and participation of women, girls, trans, and intersex persons in decision-making, particularly political decision making. And 3, to strengthen and improve the economic climate and economic opportunities for these constituencies. This ties in very well to Women's Fund Asia's own priority areas and our own thematics as well that we structure our work around. And those apply for this particular Leading from the South call as well. I'll just quickly take us through them. So it gives us an overview of what are the kind of interventions and programs that we can support under this. So the first thematic that we're looking at is strengthening feminist voices. And this provides grants and support to grassroots feminist leadership and movements. So we look at supporting work that builds perspective and understanding on feminist principles, work that develops new feminist discourses, continued mobilization on the ground, supporting second-line leadership in feminist organizations, innovative interventions that use media for furthering feminist dialogue and discourse. The second thematic area that we work in and the call will also support is access to justice. So here we are looking to support interventions that increase women, girls, trans, and intersex people's access to justice, including interventions such as raising legal awareness, training women paralegal folks, creating pathways and mechanisms for survivors of gender-based violence to access the judicial system, and a host of other interventions under this particular thematic. Sorry, 1 moment. Yeah. And the third thematic that we focus on is autonomy, decisions, and sexual rights. This thematic looks at working on and promoting right to sexuality, right to decision-making, right to bodily autonomy, which includes work on leadership and choices by women, girls, trans, and intersex people. It looks at LGBTIQ rights, abortion rights, sexual and reproductive health and rights. So as I'm sharing these, the overview of these thematics, I also just want to add that these are just examples of some of the interventions that we supported under these thematics. The thematic itself is fairly broad and wide. So these are in no way the limiting sort of issues that we support, and we encourage and welcome you to apply with your work and your proposal, even if it doesn't sort of fit into some of these thematics, because we're also always looking at emerging issues and emerging issues within thematics as well. The fourth priority area that we have and we will support through this call is the environmental justice thematic. This centers issues such as right to clean water, right to sanitation, climate-related displacement, particularly working with indigenous communities, Adivasi communities, on deforestation, climate justice, and gender, climate access and disability issues. So a host of different issues, and including groups that work in ecologically fragile environments, groups that work with populations that are directly and disproportionately impacted by climate change. The fifth and final area within which we support grants is the movement and labor priority area, and this thematic addresses people's right to safe migration, economic justice, labor rights, particularly looking at women, girls, trans, and intersex persons in vulnerable, informal, or stigmatized sectors such as sex work, garment factories, tea plantations, domestic work, and migrant laborers. Again, I'll just iterate this. These are just indicative examples of the kind of work, and it is fairly broad and intersectional as well. So we encourage you to, apply with your work and your intervention, even if you feel it doesn't sort of fit within any of these thematics very neatly. Just move on to the type of grants that you can apply for under the Leading from the South program. So there are 3 kinds of grants that are available under this program. And for each grant, we are looking to support different kinds of groups and activities. So the first grant category that's available is for frontline defenders. And this is for groups that are working at subnational level. So at village level, district level, local level groups that are working directly with communities on mobilization and leadership building at those levels. And there's an annual budget requirement for this particular category, and that is euro 23,000 to euro 90,900. So what this means is that if you're applying for the Frontline Defenders category grant, you would require to have a minimum annual budget in the last financial year of euro 23,000 and a maximum annual budget in the last financial year of 90,900 euros. And the maximum grant amount that's available for this particular category is euro 48,600. All grants are for 33 months, which is 2 years and 9 months. So the maximum grant amount is for that entire 2 years and 9 months period. The second grant category that we have is the Amplifying Voices grant category. And here we are looking to support work on campaigns, knowledge, capacity building, research and evidence generation that's more at national and sub-regional levels. So again, looking at organizations that work in multiple states, multiple districts, have a more national approach to their work, or are looking at sub-regional sort of work as well. And the annual budget requirement is at least a minimum annual budget of euro 90,000 in the previous financial year. The maximum grant amount that's available for this particular category is euro 206,600. All of this information is available on the call guidelines as well. So I encourage you to look through the links that have been shared by my colleagues in the chat and open the call guidelines. And there's more detail in it as well. The third and the final category of grants that we have available under the Leading from the South program are promoting regional feminist agenda grants. And here we are looking to support work at a more macro level. So it's still looking at capacity building and knowledge building work, but capacity building of other feminist organizations, because this grant is more for regional level and international organizations that are based in the Global South, in Asia region. So looking at evidence-based advocacy and knowledge building work, particularly work that also aligns itself within the international treaty framework, so CEDAW, UPR reporting, and some of the other frameworks as well. And here the annual budget requirement is euro 180,200. That's the minimum annual budget that you would be required to have in the past financial year if you're applying for this BRFA grant. And the maximum grant amount that's available for the 33 months, 2 year, 9 month period is euro 446,800. I'll also like to share here that we support consortium applications, we support network applications as well. So for any of these categories, if you'd like to apply as a group of organizations through a consortium application, or if you're a network and you would like to apply, that's open as well. Individuals, unfortunately, cannot apply. Individual activists cannot apply for this particular program, but we do have a Strengthening Feminist Movements program, grant-making program that will launch in a couple of weeks. So please watch out our social media and our website for that announcement. And that program is open to individual activists. So if you're applying as a consortium for any of these grants, you can actually pool your annual budgets to meet the annual budget requirement within this particular category. So just quickly to also share who are the kind of groups that we're looking to fund. And as Malin shared earlier, our mandate is to work on women, girls, trans, and intersex persons' rights. So we are going to prioritize groups that are self-led. And by that, I mean that the board and staff are led by the communities and constituencies that the organization serves. And I'll get to that in more detail in just a minute. We're also looking to support groups that are feminist and rights-based. And when we say feminist, we mean groups that sort of center feminist principles in their work, which is addressing inequality, discrimination, power, centering agency, leadership, and autonomy of women, girls, trans, and intersex persons in their work, and work towards advancing their rights through centering the rights-based framework in their programming. Like I said, a little bit more on what we mean by self-led and what is the leadership looking at. So when we are saying leadership, we are looking at the highest decision-making body within your organization. So, and even within those bodies, looking at the highest decision-making position. So for instance, if you have a governing board, then that for us is the highest decision-making body in your organization. And the chairperson of the governing board is what we look at when we say leadership for board and staff. Similarly, the highest decision-making position within your staff will be looked at as the leadership of the staff. And the criteria that we have for assessing self-led is that the board and staff should be led by either a woman, a girl, a transgender person, or an intersex person. So that criteria is applicable across all grant categories. And it is something that we look at because we do prioritize groups that are self-led. And the reason for that is our mandate essentially is to direct more and more resources to groups that are led by the constituencies that represent, that are representative of the constituencies that are served, to make sure that more and more resources are accessed by the movement directly. And that's the reason why we have this eligibility criteria. We also look at the composition of your board and staff. For frontline defenders category grant, it's at least 60% of your governing board and 60% of your staff should comprise of one or more of these eligible constituencies, which is women, girls, trans, and or intersex persons. And this is 70% for amplifying voices and PRFA organizations. So what this essentially means is that if you are an intersex-led organization, we're looking at your board and staff composition, and your board and staff, 70% of your board and staff should be comprising of any of these constituents, any of these 4 constituencies. If you're a women-led organization, similarly, we're looking at 70% of your board and staff to be comprising of any of these constituencies. It doesn't mean that all 4 constituencies have to be there, because again, the idea is we're looking at the representation of the constituencies that the organization works with in the ownership, management, and day-to-day, operations of the organization. So because that is the principle that we're looking at, it really depends on what are the constituencies you work with, and then how are they reflected in your board and staff leadership and in your board and staff composition. I hope that's a little clear. If not, please don't worry about it. We will definitely come back to it. I also want to iterate here that when we're looking at girl-led organizations particularly, we are looking at organizations that are led by girls between the ages of 18 to 24. And this is recognizing that there is no standard agreed upon definition of girls. WFA supports the work of girls through 2 different modalities. One is to support girl-led organizations directly, and these are organizations that are led by girls between the ages of 18 to 24. And 2 is to support the rights of girls more broadly. And this is for organizations that work for the rights of girls above the ages of 13. I'm just going to move to the next bit, which is to look at the eligible countries. This is just a quick sort of reminder. This is also available on our call guidelines. In Southeast Asia and East Asia, we're looking at Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Burma, Myanmar, Philippines, Thailand, Timor-Leste, Laos, Vietnam, and Mongolia. This list is also available on the call guideline, and you can have a look at that. We do support work in Afghanistan, although currently we are looking at a focused crisis funding call for Afghanistan next year. And that's why Afghanistan is not included in this particular list for now. What we fund in terms of strategies differs based on the categories that I had earlier just shared and the thematic that you're applying for. But in terms of the activities, we do offer a mix of programmatic and institutional activities that are supported. So for frontline defender category, applicants can budget for up to 40% of institutional costs, and this would be your administrative costs, salaries, rents, audits, and other such operational costs. For the other two LFS grant categories, which is the amplifying voices and the promoting regional feminist agenda categories, it's slightly reduced, so it's 30% of your budget can be institutional costs, and the rest is programmatic costs. Just a quick reminder, though, the institutional component does not cover any land assets. I would encourage you to look through the budget template that's in the call pack, and my colleagues have shared on the chat the link to the call pack where you have the call guidelines and all the other documents. Just look through the budget and you have a tab there which looks at all the costs that are included, and it gives very clear guidelines as to what each budget head needs to look at. Quickly to take you through what we do not fund. Since we are a feminist rights-based funder, we do not support strategies that violate women, girls, trans, and intersex persons' rights. This would include strategies that focus on raid and rescue, anti-sex work strategies, groups that are anti-abortion, anti-LGBTIQ rights strategies and groups. We also don't support strategies that focus on microcredit, microfinance, and other income generation activities. We also don't support groups that are for-profit groups, that are educational institutions, or that are exclusively doing academic research or affiliated with educational institutions and academic research institutions. We do not support any groups that are affiliated with electoral or party-based politics, or groups that have a primary purpose of service delivery, charity, humanitarian assistance, and poverty alleviation programs. We also do not support groups that are chapters of multilateral organizations or chapters of international organizations, including international non-governmental organizations that are based in the global north. Again, this is the last list of groups that I've shared. This is not to say that we don't support the work of groups that are doing service delivery or humanitarian assistance, or we don't see the value in those groups. It is just to prioritize the resources based on our mandate to give as much access to movements directly that are working on a rights-based approach and that have human rights programming. So this is more to make sure that limited resources that we do have can be prioritized in that sense. We also don't do rapid response grant making. We do have a Kagapai COVID fund grant that we have just concluded, but rapid response is not something that we also support. Very quickly on the selection process. So we receive a large volume of applications and we follow a participatory community-informed approach in our grant making. And what this essentially means is that the processing and eligibility screening for all the applications is done by the Women's Fund Asia team, after which the application is reviewed by external feminist reviewers from the region who have thematic and context expertise, and they do the review and shortlisting, after which we have an external advisory committee that comprises of feminist activists, experts, academics, practitioners, that actually does the final selection. And grant notifications would take somewhere around December. It's a bit long process, I would say, but that's also because we do engage with community leaders at various steps. We do engage with participatory processes that take a fair bit of time to set up, and the volume of applications we do receive is also quite high. So noting that it takes a bit of time to get to the grant selection process, just so you are mindful of that when you're applying as well. So I'll just pause here for a minute to check with the interpreters if everything is okay. If I need to slow down or do anything differently, please let me know. Okay. I'm just checking to see. All right. Okay, so very quickly on the application itself, how to apply. Applications are submitted online. You already have access to the form that's been shared in the chat. So you can go through the form and the call back. The call back has the call guidelines, which gives you a more detailed understanding of the call for applications. It also has a dedicated frequently asked questions document, which you can go through to get more clarity. Please do look at the budget template, like I mentioned earlier. The budget template also has country-specific columns, and this is for groups that are applying for multi-country projects or regional projects that have different partners at different country levels. We do like to understand how are the resources being allocated across different countries, and therefore the budget also has that requirement. So it'll say country 1, country 2, country 3, and you can just fill it out for one country if that's your project. You can fill it out for multiple countries if that's the project that you're applying for. There's also the staff and the board template. Please do look at that. We do ask for details about your staff and your board there as well. And in the call guidelines and the application form, you will find a checklist of all the other documents that are required, which would be your audits and a bunch of other essential documents about your organization, such as your annual reports, your registration. So just have a look at that before you start applying. The last date for submissions is 17th June. The details of that are also available on our call page, the website call page as well. And you can write to us on the applications ID if there are any more queries. The applications are that you're submitting, that you would be able to submit on the form, the online form. This would be in English. If you are applying under the Frontline Defenders category and you would require language support, you can email us on the applications at womensfundasia.org ID that's been put in the chat. You can email us there and we can have a conversation about how we can look at different language applications for you. Please do mention the language in which you would like to apply, and if you could send this in by latest by 14th of June, which is Tuesday, that would be really helpful for us to then prepare and get back to you if we need anything else from that. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment so that I can then share the application form with you and take a quick 5 minutes to go through that. Yasmin, do we have another 5 minutes that I can take?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So yeah, this is the form. I'm just taking you through it very, very quickly. You can use the link to go here. The first thing that I would suggest that you do is use the Save My Progress and Resume Later option that's available on the top of the form. So when you click it, it will open up asking you for your email and setting a password. So you can use this option very easily to save the form and keep coming back to it and applying in different sessions. And you have this resume from a previously saved form. So you get a link on your email essentially that you can use to come back to the form. Once you're on the form, the first part of the form is the eligibility criteria again. So please do read through this, make sure that you are applying for the right category of the grant. A lot of the times grant applications get disqualified because the category that they've applied for is not the category under which we can support that work. So please do make sure you read that. The minute you click on confirm eligibility, the entire form becomes available to you. The first section of the form essentially is just looking at Are you a new applicant? Are you a past applicant? And which category you're applying under. You'll see there are helpful little hints under each question as well. So you can review these when you make your selection. The second section of the form asks for contact details of the organization and the lead person within the organization who's applying. So I'm just going to skip that. Then we have the third section, which is looking at the organizational details. So basically all your registration information about the work that you do, the networks you're a part of, and the constituencies that you serve. Your annual budget requirement, all of that comes in here. There is a section on board details. So if you check yes here, the questions for the board will open up and I'll ask you to fill up all these questions. And then there is a checklist, which is the template that I had mentioned earlier that you would have to download and fill and attach with your application. Similarly for staff, and then there are some other questions for applicants who are applying as a consortium. So if you check yes here, you can add details about the consortium partners as well. And then finally, we have the fourth section where you can fill in details about the proposal. So the amount that you're requesting, the countries where you're working, the constituencies, the strategies, all of that will come in here. Please note that each question has a character limit, not a word limit, but a character limit. So please be mindful of that when you're filling this out. I would highly encourage you to print or download a version of this form, and then just make sure that you are matching your responses to the character limit if you're trying to build your proposal offline. You can also start building it online using the save and resume option. So there's a bunch of questions here. And then last, we just ask you for 2 references and a checklist of required documents, which you would have to attach. And this is really helpful because when you're sending in your application, you can actually just check each document and make sure that it has been submitted. And if not, for any reason, there would be an explanation box that would come up. For instance, it says, if not, please explain why. So there is option to also explain why you would not be able to submit a particular document. There's also consent for your use of your data. So please read through that. You'll have to check everything. And then when you're done, you can just click submit, and that's your application. So I'm going to stop sharing this now and go back to the original presentation. That's it. So I'm just going to hand it over to my colleague Wei-san for some quick application tips. Wei-san, over to you.
Thanks, Himakshi. Right, so Himakshi, could you move to the next slide, please? Right, so before we start with the tips, I just wanted to reiterate some key information. We do receive a very high volume of applications, and unfortunately, we are only able to support a small percentage of the applications. So these tips, we hope, will help push your applications ahead. Right, so key information, as Himakshi said earlier, 17th of June at 2 p.m., not 12 midnight, my apologies. It is 2 p.m. Sri Lankan time. That is the deadline. And in fact, we do strongly encourage that you submit your applications 2 to 3 days in advance, because we don't want you to miss the application deadline because of technical issues with the online form, with your internet, for various reasons. So please do plan to submit at least 2 to 3 days in advance so that you're not stuck with trying to submit on the last day at the last moment at 2 p.m. Sri Lankan time. The form, as you know, is online, so the link has been shared earlier. And as Himakshi shared earlier also a very useful tool on the online form, which I highly encourage you to use, is the save and resume function, which is on the top right-hand corner of the form. You will find a text that says, save my progress and resume later. So what this function does is if your form is stuck, for example, you're not able to type in a response, saving and resuming will reset the problem. The other thing is to also save periodically so that the saved version of your form is the most up-to-date information that you have keyed in. If you do not save and resume, the form will not automatically save for you. The submit button, I just wanted to highlight that when you click on submit, the online form will give you an opportunity to make corrections. So you must click confirm after you click submit to finalize and send your application. You can also print a copy when you click on submit, but you don't need to because a copy will actually be emailed to you to the email of the primary contact person. Right, so where do I start? Looking at the form, it is quite long, and we really want to make sure that before you put in all that effort into applying, that you check if you are eligible. That is the first thing you should be checking. You can look at the guidelines for details around the minimum and maximum size of your annual budget, what your board and staff composition should be. All this information is in the guidelines. The next thing you want to think about is the grant category, because the eligibility differs for different grant categories. So for example, frontline defenders, at least 60% of the board and staff should meet the should be comprised of women, girls, trans, and or intersex persons. Whereas for the two larger grants, which is the AV Amplifying Voices and PRFA, has a different composition. It is higher at 70%. So look at the eligibility criteria and look at the grant category that you want to apply for. The FAQs also will answer a lot of your burning questions. We know that some have asked how many applications you can submit. So the FAQs will tell you, for example, that you can submit multiple applications, but you can only receive one grant. So, to save your time, submit one grant. That is very strong. The exception is that if you apply for one grant for your organization and the second grant is as part of a consortium. This and more you can find out in the FAQs. Right, so the second piece of information or tip as we would like to share is that for WFA, self-led work is very important. We do prioritize self-led organizations and self-led work. What this means is, please tell us, clearly identify the identities that you hold as an organization. Who are you working with? Which communities, are your organization representing? What is your connection and embeddedness within that community? And again, I highlight this because during the review and the scoring by the advisory committee, this is something they look at, because WFA does prioritize self-led groups, meaning that the highest decision-making bodies in the organization is representative of the constituency with which you are working. So for example, an organization that is working on, say, the labor rights of garment workers should ideally be led by garment workers themselves. This does not mean that if you don't have that self-led aspect to the work that you cannot apply, you are still eligible. This is merely a tip to strengthen your application. So if you do not have within the decision makers, within the decision-making bodies, the constituencies for whom you are working with or with which you are representing, at least let us know, how does the constituency or that community, how are they involved in decision-making in your organization or in the programming? And the final tip, of course, this sounds very common. This is common sense information, but we feel that it's really important to tell us about the context in which you are working. So tell us, why is this work necessary? Why is this work critical in the country or in the community, with the constituency that you are working with? If you're building on a previous activity, previous program, tell us about how this proposal builds on previous work. That is also very important, so that we can see how critical it is, how you are making sure that the work is sustainable. All that is very important. In terms of making of the word realistic, what we mean is that you do not need to put in a lot of activities to make the application seem more worth funding. For us, we believe that you know your context and your issues and your constituency best and how to work with them. And so, even if you have fewer activities, as long as you just let us know what it is for, why it's important, that is sufficient. You don't need to pack your proposal with more activities, essentially. So what is more important is that the work is realistic, that it is possible to complete within the 2 years or 3 years the 2 years and 9 months that you're applying for. And finally, as you know, we do have a committee of experts who are from the region, who are looking at your application, and they may be from a different part of Asia or a different country and may not fully understand the complete context in which you are working. So please help them see the connections by telling us about the context in which you work. These experts, of course, are experts in the region, but one may not know everything. And so, when you talk about the context, please help us understand why it's important. What is the context in which you are working with? What is the context in which this constituency operates in? Don't assume that the reviewer knows everything simply because they are an expert in the region or are part of a specific constituency. Any information you provide to help the reviewers see the connections would be very, very helpful. And that's it. That's our top tips, as it were. I really hope that this is helpful and will help strengthen your application. We really look forward to receiving your applications. And yeah, so over to you, Eileen, for the question and answer part of our webinar.